You're listening to the Fooled by the Root podcast.
Robert Ferraro is a pop culture journalist whose interviews include Jane Seymour, Melissa Etheridge, Paula Abdul, and others, and the founder of The Giving Arts, a website through which he helps public figures publicize their charitable causes. His essay sharing the challenges of his life as an adoptee, entitled My Love is Stronger Than Your Disregard, received considerable acclaim for its honesty and vulnerability. A companion piece chronicling his emotional attempt to engage his birth family in person is being written now. Welcome, Robert.
Well, thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. I loved your essay. You gave us a lot of things that touched me that felt close to home as well. Before we dive into that, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your adoption and what you want to share?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Up until the things I covered, it was pretty uneventful, and it was actually a lot more favorable, I would imagine, the circumstances were than a lot of the stories that I hear. Matter of fact, for the longest time, I felt like I shouldn't speak up because I had so much of a routine, what I would call a routine adoption. I was born on March 10th, 1972. I was placed for adoption immediately, and my adoptive family had me by April 21st. So when you combine those stories and my family, I went into, there were complications that I'll probably address like somewhere down the line, maybe after everybody involved is gone. But while we're here, this is the story that I'm telling. And my parents held up their end of the deal. They loved me, and they sought to make sure that I was loved and that I knew I was loved. And they didn't have much money, but they bent over backwards to give me experiences and things to make my life worthwhile. So that kind of upbringing I had made me hesitant to talk about the stuff that came later. But eventually I said, you know what? Like if some of us walked 6 miles in the snow to school and other people walked 3 miles in the snow to school, we still all got frostbite. And so there's different, levels of pain maybe, but we're all in some sort of pain. And that's what caused me to eventually write the piece.
That's so interesting. One of the things that really struck me about your piece was when you were starting to, I guess, have more personal problems in high school, getting into trouble. Let's put it that.
Yeah. Sure.
Did anyone ever look at the fact that you were adopted, that perhaps relinquishment, that all of those things could have been at the root? It wasn't just you being a problem.
That is a great question, Ella. I mean, no, the answer is no. I was seeing these people in the mid to late 1980s. So we're talking about well over a quarter of a century ago, and things have progressed so much since then, of course, which is why yours is such a smart question, but when I was going through it, no. And I heard everything. And I also sought professional counseling on the outside as a young adult. And I had some really strange experiences because I let them know that I was adopted. I let them know that sometimes I felt a disconnect, that comes when you're adopted, with society and my parents and everything else. And they kind of glossed by that. And a lot of times went on to things that I think that they were more geared towards. In other words, I thought there was like maybe an unseen or seen bias saying, hey, this is bothering you. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't think so. I mean, I don't want to go in a wayward direction, but I do want to say that I went to see, at one point in a 2-year period, I went to see like maybe 4 or 5 professionals. And this actually happened. One of the professionals told me that he thought my problem was that I wasn't doing anything civically, that I was outgoing and stuff, and I should be involved in civic things, like join the fire department, he said verbatim. I went to go get breakfast the next morning, and I looked at the local paper, and I found out that his son was the chief of the fire department. So that was one thing. All right. There was another, which I'll skip because we don't have to make this into a whole thing. But the third thing is even more incredible. There was a guy who I really liked, and he was a big African American, strong guy. And I was like, this guy's an athlete one way or the other. And he just kept saying to me, wow, you said you got kicked off the baseball team when you were academically ineligible. That must have hurt. I said, well, no, that sure it hurt. Yeah, it didn't feel good. And then he said, yeah. And he kept every week revisiting that and saying, yeah, you didn't have a chance to be competitive. That probably bothers you emotionally. So one day, to be perfectly honest, I went out on a Saturday night, got super drunk, and I woke up on a Sunday morning and I turned the football game on, the Miami Dolphin game. I was living near there at the time, and this guy makes a gigantic tackle. I mean, a big hit, and he celebrates, and he takes his helmet off and celebrates. And it's my counselor, and the one telling me that I need to go back and play sports. So what I've found is that it's hard. You need to really look deep when trying to pick a professional, because a lot of times they might impose their thing, and they're always going to miss adoption. Almost always.
That is so true. It does seem pretty ubiquitous that way, right? It's not a problem.
Yeah. So do you have parents? Oh, you do. Do they, right. Did they not hurt you? Oh, okay. Well, then let's just move along. It's baseball.
Right. Exactly. Or, you should volunteer in your community, or that's so interesting. I find that suggestion in particular very odd.
Yeah, it's so unethical. Yeah. So unethical. I feel like if we had put that in front of a board of his peers, he might have a problem, to be honest, because that's way over the line.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Because that's not even taking into consideration not the fact that you're adopted, but also your own personal interests and things. Like, you would think he would interview you about those first and then maybe suggest something from that list.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So
exactly.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how old, I was trying to kind of put the chronological order, when you finally did go back to the agency that handled your adoption, what age were you then?
I was, I was early 30s.
Okay.
Early 30s. I don't mind telling you that I'm 51 today, and I'm early 30s when I first asked for that printed information.
Okay. And was there a point that just made you, I know you had listed a couple things that you thought adoption, being adopted was cool, right? You had two moms and the things you wrote in there, but then you started to hear things like, oh, it's because of his adoption, he did something horrible. And so you start picking those things up as an adopted child, like I think we all do, right?
Right.
So, was there a turning point in your world that you were like, I really need more information?
Yeah, this is just pure honesty. I would love to tell you something different. I would love to steer away from this, but I'm going to be honest. I dated a woman who did not care for my mother, and she started to talk to me about where I came from and this and that. And certainly that wasn't my motivation. I don't like what's going on here. I don't like my mom. But that kind of got the talks going, and she had a bit of a fractured family herself, so. That was when I said, you know what, why don't I just try to access this information, which supposedly is available to me for a couple of $100. And I did that, waited for about 2 months, and then got the information back. Well, I can tell you, though, that when I first became really interested in it, and the thing like why I started to feel like my story has validity or had validity is because I never thought about a negative effect on me. I was like, I'm having a lot of trouble with my parents, but I'm a teenager and I'm difficult, and I know that a lot of things are on me. But I was dating a different woman in Florida when I was in my 20s, and she had received some abuse in her life, and she wanted to see if she could help her life. So we went to a Barnes and Noble on a Sunday night, and she went into the aisle of self-help and started looking for things. And I was just kind of hanging around, and I looked on the shelf and I saw a book about adoption by Betty Jean Lifton. And I grabbed the book, and I was floored by what was going on. And like I said in the piece, I was reading it on the floor. Like, I was sat on the floor in the middle of the aisle, and I didn't even know I had gotten there because I was just so amazed by what I was reading. And so after that, I felt like, hey, I didn't walk around like I'm a victim. I didn't walk around and say, oh, I'm going to do this terrible thing in the name of being adopted. I'm going to hurt this person, but who cares? I'm adopted. I have the right to do this. No, I was just running through life doing badly. And then when I saw the book said, and it read like my biography. And so that's the angle in which I approached it. So, and about 6 or 7 years after that, I asked for the information.
Okay. Yeah, I love the quotes that you actually listed in your piece. They hit us all, I think. So, how lucky you were, honestly, to kind of find that book. We're not much different in age. I'm a little older than you, so but my journey of like trying to find everything came a lot later. So it's pretty new for me. And I'm always fascinated just to see what that turning point is in someone's world. I think right now, kids, 18, young adults are kind of finding this a lot sooner. And I think it's because we have the information out there. There are lots of support groups and Facebook, and
they have the information out there, and it's so accessible, which is really great.
Right.
For me, almost felt like I was, and I know that this is not an original emotion. I felt like I might have been cheating on my parents a little bit by trying to go get this information behind their back, because I was going to have to approach the same agency and that they used in order to get me. So it was almost like I felt like I was running behind their back to this. That's their relationship, not me. And we think crazy things like that, and I did. But that's why I think that's a great question, because it really takes something to have somebody start looking. It's not, you just don't do that in between groceries and getting the car washed. Like something happens. I agree.
Right. Can I ask you a quick question about how your adopted parents, are they alive still?
They're
Are they
both
a part of this journey?
No, a matter of fact, I don't mind telling you that either. They are not. I have not discussed any of this with them. As a matter of fact, when I put the essay out and I also included it on Facebook, I made sure that any relations I had on Facebook had been blocked from it, because I didn't want them to find out about it. All I do is say, positive things about them in the piece, but it just feels like this is mine. And it's tough when you include others. They would be supportive, but I don't mind telling you, like, my mother's a complicated person, and I don't want any complications in this. This is just too subtle a thing. So my goal is just to always do good by them. I think I'm a really good son, and they tell me that I am, and I try to keep that side right. But when it comes to this, like, this is not unlike my love life or anything else. This is mine.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, because that is so important. Because it's a fine line we walk on. So thanks for sharing that, because I know a lot of people do struggle. I don't know if you've got something on that.
No doubt.
That is hard. And I understand too. That's how I felt, that it was mine, and, but then I decided to include, maybe that's not quite the right word, but to let them know what I was doing. And then, but still keep it separate, because I have kids who were going to be meeting biological family and stuff, and our relationship totally broke down. We've been, estranged for about 4 years now, because they didn't quite understand that this, it's like that hero's journey. You have to do it alone sometimes,
True.
No one can help you through it, really. I mean, you can have support in the terms of encouragement, but that's really brave of you, just to sort of block it all.
It's especially in terms of what you're saying, it is so difficult. I guess there's a million ways to say it, but I think it's tough because they are not unbiased observers. Like, their heart is in it as well, and like all of their heart is in it. I want to talk about my parents, in this case, anybody's parents. These are their children, and their children are now going to go out after they put in all the blood, sweat, and tears, and they've been with you all the way through. And now they're going to go out and say, let's see this person that was around at the beginning, which in many ways, a lot of adopted parents don't really think too fondly of birth parents. And, sometimes they do, but oftentimes they don't. And it's like, how are we going to navigate this? If I become super friendly with them, how are they going to feel? I felt like the only healthy way for it to be done all the way around is to just keep it separate.
Yeah.
Compartmentalize. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's not exclusive to adoptees, but I think we're particularly good at that.
Without question. Without question. Yeah.
Well, that made me think about, again, like Amy said, quotes that you had in your article by Betty Jean Lifton. Her book was hugely influential to me as well. Many people cite The Primal Wound, and that one I thought was also interesting, but I think because Betty Jean was an adopted person, her observations were more interesting to me than the observations of an adopting mother. Okay. But you did put in there the one thing you didn't quite, I guess, resonate with was that we must not attempt to retrieve our information. And yet when I listen to you, I feel like, I wonder, like, in feeling like you need to keep it separate, or that you didn't want to be the ungrateful son or something, was that sort of the unconscious, I'm not going to retrieve it?
It's a good question. I felt like this, I'll say it this way, and you guys will be able to connect the dots very easily, I think. I feel like my mother was a school teacher, loves teaching school more than anybody loves anything. She's obviously long retired now. She wanted children more than she wanted anything in the world, and was biologically unable to do so. She also came from a very abusive household. So you throw all those things in, and it was, in my opinion, a more complicated issue than it could have been or should have been. And so as a result, I kind of, maybe that's that. Like for a while, I was like, I just would have a guilt about it. Like I knew, I'm not dumb. Like I know it's my right to know. But on the other hand, I also felt like, so I was looking at it more like, you know what, Elle? I was looking at it more like consequences, more like, virtue. It was less virtue, and it was more, I don't want to open up what could be serious consequences in our relationship.
That's fair enough. Yeah. Because it is complicated.
Yeah, very.
Really, really complicated. And I think some people think, oh, it's fine. It's done. It's over. You had a family. It's just like, no, it is never done.
That's not how it works. And it's never done. My mother is 81 years old, and I probably wouldn't feel any more comfortable today than I did 25 years ago, 30 years ago. It's just, it's a difficult thing for everybody.
Yeah, it is, I think. Now, the other part that, because we have your article to go on, what I really resonated with that you wrote, you sort of preemptively shut people out throughout your life, that you would, how did you put it? Something about like an employer would offer you something and you would
go to get another job.
Quit, actually.
Yeah, quit.
Which
quit.
Is sort of big, but even in relationships, like I'll break up first, things like that. I don't know about others, but I sure related to that because of the rejection thing, right?
Of course.
Like, I'm just gonna shut that down. I've been called a slippery bar of soap, actually. So
is that right?
Yeah.
That would be an upgrade for me. I want to be called a slippery bar of soap.
Well, I'll share it.
Fair enough.
You can have it too. But did you notice that has that taken a long time to get over the fear and to not do that preemptive shutout?
Definitely. I hang around longer now. I can accept compliments and my wife has a lot to do with that. I've been with my wife for 12 years. She's a godsend. She's one of the greatest people I know, which is why she's my wife. And she fills in a lot of those holes. Like for she really, and we never talk about it. It's just in the way that she's such a decent person and she's such an inherently great partner in life that it kind of, calms me. But I have a friend who I've known for many, many years. And he says that whenever I call, he answers the phone because I'm like the hot blonde because he knows if he doesn't answer the phone, he may not hear from me for another 2 months. So
That's great.
And by the way, he's a comedian, so that's where all that comes from. But it's true though. It's like I'm a little elusive, and I don't like try to plan out to be elusive, but that is definitely how people think of me, and I certainly would have to plead guilty to it at times. And I can't tell you what that's like, other than the fact that, and there's no way you guys won't be able to relate with this. It's just I need to be in control, not in some oppressive way, but I need to know who's going to be at that party. I need to know who's going where. If we're going somewhere together, who's going to be in what car. Not crazy, even though that sounds crazy. I just need to keep myself out of situations that would make me uncomfortable. Does that sound similar? Something you can relate to?
Relate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My family knows. Yeah. Things
they know, like,
organized, and it's not going to go well if we're not pulling out of the driveway at the time we say we're going to pull out of the driveway, because everything consequently will fail.
Right. The same friend that I was talking about here, he made the comment or observation that we always, when we go out, like to a diner or something, back when I lived in his town, I would always want to be as far away as possible, not have really anybody behind us if we can help it, and be able to see everything in front of us. And he said, "What are you, a mobster? Are you afraid someone's going to come in here and shoot you down or anything?" I was like, "It's just part of me. It's just a habit. I don't know what else to tell you."
That is so funny, because I do the same thing, always sitting with my back to the wall. I'm like, you do not silhouette yourself in a window, or no. I need to see all of the entrances and exits. And I've been teased about being a gangster as well.
Hell, we don't want any surprises.
No, I think that's huge.
Right.
Any surprises, right? Like, I don't know how you are. Is it actually your birthday today?
Oh, no, the way I phrased it, I knew. I'm sorry. No, missed it by a couple months. But
okay. Damn. No. Okay. But still, I don't know how you are. Like, I hate surprises on my birthday.
Hate them.
I hate surprises on any special occasion. You want to... No, that's a noki dokie.
Absolutely not. I cannot handle them. I was dating a girl 15, 20 years ago. She thought it would be funny, even though I hated surprises, to like do that TGI Fridays thing where they bring the cake and, and the thing, and they're yelling and everybody's singing. I was so unreasonably mad at her. I mean, she was just trying to do something nice for me, but it was like an eruption. I couldn't handle it. It was such a trespass to me,
Yeah, I do think that is also an adoptee thing, right? Where to someone else, it's like, relax, it's no big deal. But to us, it brings up something that it's the overreaction to a very small incident. And now, like, as I'm older and I can look back at some of those things, I can see myself like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Like, why? And now I'm like, now I know why I did that, because it kind of went outside my boundaries. I was trying to protect myself, and that hypervigilance of making sure everything was great,
Definitely. So, yeah.
And it's not just the surprise, it's the spectacle. Yeah. You just said the singing happy birthday thing in front, and I just about broke out into because I can't deal with not being able to fly under the radar.
Right.
I just want to blend into the woodwork. That's all I want to do.
Present but invisible.
Yes.
That's what you want to be. You want to be there. You don't want to be on your couch watching TV on a Friday night at 10 o'clock eating cookies. Like you'd rather be there, but you'd like to be invisible if you could.
Yes, exactly. And so that would have horrified me too. I would have died.
It was bad.
Yeah, I have no doubt. And I also understand then why you have been apologizing for the past.
I was bad. And I still say, oh my God, I'm so sorry about that night.
Oh man. That then makes me think, well, and then Amy, what you were saying about the things that we realize we were doing. Oh, that's adoption. Not to excuse, not to find a reason to pathologize ourselves or whatever, but simply that we have these habits or ways of being, ways of avoiding surprises or spectacle or I have a hard time having an opinion on some things.
Mm.
Certain things, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
real easy to tell you what I think about politics, but not easy to tell you where I want to go for dinner
Mm.
because I want other people to enjoy the dinner. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll throw out the long line, where would you like to go or whatever, and then if their suggestion's not mine, I reel mine in real quick and just say, oh no, that's fine, we'll go. What were some of the things, like, did you experience that when you were reading Betty Jean's book and then ending up sitting on the floor
Mm.
and, you know, did you have those realizations where there's this thing I do? Oh, that's
Oh,
adoption.
oh
There's,
yeah. Oh
yeah.
yes.
What
Oh
were some
yes.
of those? Would you be able to share?
Sure. I mean, this might be more than you bargained for, but over the years, I mean, I couldn't handle any type of rejection. If it was like, say, in a work setting, especially if it was like from a male, uh, so how would I handle that? Like, well, how I would handle that is I would sort of like manipulate my way back into this person's circle to make up for whatever it was that he was not happy with me about. I'm thinking particularly of sales managers that were very high on me at one point when I was selling stuff, and then kind of weren't so high on me after a while because like a couple new hot shots came in, and then I was kind of peeling off a little bit in my production. And I just was like, I just felt the need, like my goal in life is to make them really love me again. Like, and it's so ridiculous because they're my managers. They don't love me. It doesn't have to be this negative thing, but they don't love me. My whole goal was like, they need to approve of me again. And so doing those things, like sort of like you kind of suppressing, your desires for where you'd like to eat and stuff. Like your idea goes out the window right away. There was some of that with me, but I'm also Italian and I'm from New Jersey and I have a temper, and it's like I was heard from many times during these periods where I felt like I was being walked over, but I was being walked over. Like there's many times I was super agreeable when I shouldn't have been super agreeable because I found it exhausting to not be agreeable. And then I'd be getting taken advantage of from times, and I would just say, this has to come from somewhere. Like this is ridiculous. This people pleasing thing, and so eventually I kind of traced back and thought about it. And I swear to you, from the day I found her book, did everything go great? No, it did not. And there's a lot of trouble up ahead. But from the day I got the book, I knew what was happening when bad things were happening, even if I was 100% responsible for them, which was often. I knew, oh, this is what this is. I'm trying to please this person right now. And I don't really know why that's the case. Like I'm not, none of the other 25 coworkers are going head over heels trying to get this person to love them. Why do I feel like I have to be that guy? So as a result, there were times where it would work, where the bosses would say, wow, that Robert's a special guy. And coworkers and stuff would take shots at me, and they would be like, you always think you're different, or you always try to act differently than everybody else. Why do you think you can do that? Why do you feel like that? And I just felt like when things were going wrong, nobody ever said you're different. But whenever, I kind of like being myself, I guess I would say, but also too much of a people pleaser. But when I was out there trying to do things positively, I would always get, you're different. You always think you're different. You're acting different. You ever get that?
Not exactly, but very close. Inconsistent, they would think, because I would be really retiring in a lot of ways. I don't know about you, Amy, but then I would go to, I don't know, like a cocktail party or something like that. And all of a sudden, yeah, I can chat and I can mingle and I can do, and people would think, like, who do you think you're being right now? And I would think, me, actually. This is actually me. The other ones, not.
Right.
This one actually is. But then I would rein that in because then I would feel embarrassed
I mean, you're
for
the not me is sitting on the sideline. This is me. I've arrived here now.
right.
And you somehow, for some reason, are bothered by it.
Right. Yeah.
Frustrating. Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, it is, because who should I be? And my journey, like Amy's, was just started a few years ago in terms of finding biological family and things like that.
Hmm.
and I'm 53. And when I was about 50, and I always described that I broke, all of a sudden some of my relationships were much more difficult because they were now looking at me really thinking, God, you're different. What is wrong with you? And I would then hear from them, well, just be yourself now. And I would be like, I don't know who that is anymore. Right. Because when I show up as me, I seem to embarrass you, or you don't like that me. But it's complicated. Again, back to the word complicated.
It is.
Right?
Yeah, it is. Do you guys ever feel like you become like chameleons?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's like, so if you're always being a chameleon, and a successful one where you get friends, maybe you get lovers, people reward you for being a chameleon, then it's like, well, how are you ever going to find out who you really are? It takes a long time.
Yeah. And you're right. They do reward you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. You definitely get rewarded for being a chameleon. I interview pop culture figures. They vary so much in where they're coming from and the way that they are and what they've done in their lives. And I absolutely 100% am a chameleon every time I get on with them, because I have to communicate with them, and sometimes in a short window of time. And so in that way, I was blessed with this thing so that I can get in there and create a quick thing. And they often, and this is with all humility, like they often say, this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you, Robert. And I have no doubt that the reason they say that is because other people who are talking to them are not doing the chameleon thing. So therefore, it's not such a wonderful, pleasing connection for them. But because I am able to do it, they say, wow, that was time well spent. So that's one of the rare times I think it's been a positive for me, but otherwise it's been a struggle. It really gets in the way of helping you know who you are, I think.
It really is. I look at that as being sort of like, my kids are really into Batman, or when they were younger, and Two-Face, the coin. So being a chameleon can be really difficult, like you said, but it can have its positive. Like for you, for what you do, that makes you able to relate to a whole lot of different people.
Do you guys find, because you said relate to a whole bunch of different people, do you guys find that it like also brings empathy? Like I feel like we have a lot of empathy because you could relate to being someone else, like, or where they're coming from.
I think so.
Yes. Yeah. And I think too, the chameleon for me, it was in every situation was trying to be the best person I could be in that situation so that people would like me and that they would be happy with me, And so now, which is great for your job, right? But I'm 54. I'll put that out there now.
Right.
Since everyone's telling each other their ages.
I'm the baby. That's never happened. That doesn't happen anymore. This is great. Right.
But then I can look back and I think, who was that person all my life? Right? Like who am I? Because of all those different faces I put on growing up to please everybody. So.
And then you get caught sometimes if you commingle friends. So you have a friend and you act like this person with that friend, and you act like this person with that friend, and then they happen to get together, and you actually, then it really hits you in the face and you go, oh, I'm playing masquerade a little bit because I don't even know who to be right now. I've had those moments.
Sure. Yeah. When I was a kid, I would often get accused of lying, basically, or like in terms of, because of how I was acting with this person or what I had said or this, and I wasn't purposefully trying to lie or mislead, but like you said, you're this because this person needs this from you, or that's how we perceive it. And this person needs this from me. And then, if everybody's together, I've so been in that situation and I just want to hide usually when that happens.
I get it. Believe me.
Yeah. Yeah. You wrote this article about how you got then into the line of work that you have. And you managed to get in because of an adoptive mother.
That's right. That's right. Of all
Can you
things.
Tell us about that?
Yeah, the craziest thing. And just in as adult way as I can say it, I think the thing is even crazier because the woman was a sex symbol on my wall as a teenager and on my locker door, and this is what it got down to. But yeah, I mean, I had a small business that still operated in New Jersey, although I live in New England now. And it was a small with a lowercase s. It was a small business, but I was able to sell it for a little bit to somebody, and that was enough seed money for me to take off like about a year and try to become a pop culture journalist, which is what I really wanted to do. And I felt the clock ticking. I was working really hard, and I had some successes, but they were all very like hard earned. Like I had to be a chameleon a lot, and I had to really burn through a lot of energy to get there. And it really was looking like I wasn't going to get it done. I mean, I maybe in time, but I was going to have to go back to work and figure everything out, which I wound up doing anyway. But at this point, I was like, I don't know how this is going to happen. And I was just frustrated. And I opened up, I got at a flea market. I got this like 1970s music magazine. And I just flipped it open to read it, which was not uncommon for me. And I saw Ann Wilson of Heart. And she looked so young and so beautiful in it. She was leaning against like a Corvette or something. And she looked like a really welcoming person. If I was walking down the street, I would have no problem just saying, oh, hi, how are you? And I don't do that all the time. So I said to myself, I don't know, maybe that soul still exists. Maybe I can connect with her somehow 30 years after this thing was taken, or longer, whatever it is. So I reached out to her representation the next morning, first thing, and I got really lucky because her representation turned out to be a relation of hers. A family member was handling this. And so I start talking to her, and, we go back and forth. And to kind of cut the story a little short, she said, do you have this kind of a qualification? I said, no, I don't. Do you have this? No, I really don't. How many people read your stuff? Not many, so, but I really would like this. And I said, all right, well, let me go get that information for you. And that information that I was going to bring to her, these statistics were going to be so damning, there was going to be no way in a million years she would ever talk to me. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, you know what, man, like, I believe, you make your own luck and everything, but God, if I only knew one person in this business who was a family member or a friend, if I had just one little in, I'd be able to do it. And I don't. And I just, especially like if it was family, and because the band Heart is two sisters, and then she's got a family member help her. And then I'm thinking about it, and I go, oh my God. And I reached her back and I said, hey, listen, I got to be honest with you. I don't have any of these qualifications you're looking for. I'm good at this, but I know you need more than that. I said, can you just go back to Anne and let her know, I'm adopted. I could really use a break. And she went, you'll get me emotional. She went and she came back. Her assistant reached me back and said, don't worry about any of those numbers, Robert. Anne wants to speak to you. And once I did, the gravitas of having interviewed her led to many other things, including women, which I was more interested in interviewing than guys, although I interview a lot of men as well. But women love and respect her so much within the industry. And I got to talk to all sorts of interesting people, ranging from like Lita Ford to Paula Abdul to Anne's sister, Nancy, all the way down the line. Can't remember, Melissa Etheridge, etc. So, and it started my career.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, that's her story. And so we don't need details, of course, but mm-hmm. Did you talk about adoption with her at all, or that was just your in?
So funny that you say that, because I did not at all. A matter of fact, funniest thing is I actually wound up talking about adoption to Belinda Carlisle, who has no connection that I know of to adoption, but somehow we got on it and just talked about it for a little bit. I'm actually speaking with her again next week about her charitable endeavors, and she's fantastic. So it was nice to have that little 5 minutes. But with Anne, I decided it would be a professional. Don't say, oh, thank you. Act like you're supposed to be here. Act like you've been here before, kind of a thing. And that's how I did. And it was never discussed. I talked to her again. It was never discussed. This was written I gave it to her publicist, who is not in her family, a much tougher publicist. And I'm not sure that she saw it. But in the circles, as I'm walking around in these circles, I'll one day make sure that she either saw it or sees it.
It's just so interesting to me that was the end.
It was amazing. It really was, because so much of it was fueled by being adopted. To somebody else, we talk about how people who aren't adopted don't understand. To somebody else, they're like, okay, well, a guy always wanted to do this. He was getting old. He wanted to do it quick before he had regrets in life, put his head down, worked super hard. Well, the whole American story. But the truth is, life is far more complicated than that. And we all know that very well. And this was driven almost entirely by my background, of which adoption is a gigantic piece. I wanted to prove that I could do something. That desire always came out of not feeling completely whole, rejected, by my birth family, or a very important member of my birth family. And that made me want to say, watch me go, kind of a thing. Accumulate some self-worth. I could probably have that without doing any of these things, but I really want to do these things, and that would be a source of self-worth for me. So yeah, it was all fueled by that.
Yeah, when I heard that, and then just hearing you talk now, right? It's the rejection and that part of just like competition, like you want to win, right? You were going to prove it to everybody. Do you want to touch on anything with the rejection from your biological family?
Oh, absolutely. And
Okay.
I encourage you, if you're interested at all, I encourage you to ask anything in any manner, period. That's just who I am. I could just say that it answered a lot of questions for me about myself, more than if she had met me, my mother, my birth mother, who I had approached through a third party, being the adoption agency, had not only rejected me, but done so in a somewhat brutal way. The adoption agent was probably about 70 years old at the time. She's a wonderful woman. And she said that she couldn't give me much more information, but she liked me a lot. She felt for me. She thought I was like extra special, vulnerable. And so she didn't want to just say, well, she said no. So I said to her, I'm not going to say her name, but I said her name. And I said, just give me this, because this is the last time we're probably going to speak. And I'm never going to see her ever. And I don't know who she is. I never will. And she won't let me know my father or her two kids who are my siblings. Please, just, if she's the worst person, just let me know. And surprisingly, she said, Robert, in the 50 years that I've been doing this, she was probably the most caustic, individual that I've ever dealt with. She said she was so caustic. And she said she was shocked that she agreed to accept a letter from me, which I did do and did send. She said she thought for sure she was going to get hung up on it any second, but she accepted the letter. And then she said, what do you think of the letter? And she said, it's nice, but what does he want from me? He's not getting it, So that definitely fueled me, but it also answered a lot of things, because I have a temperament that did not come from my adoptive parents, because biologically that's impossible. It made me stand out in my household. They're more docile people generally. I am not. I used to go over to my friends' houses who were Italian, and they used to be shouting at each other across the table, and they used to be doing this and eating at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and all these things that were foreign to me from my family, but were what all my Italian friends did. And that's when I really saw the difference, because when I was there, it felt very comfortable. Everybody just kind of shouting and yelling and challenging each other and all that stuff. That just naturally felt comfortable to me. Then I would go home, and it would feel a little too quiet, a little too, and if I got really pumped up about something and like anger was involved, they would look at me like, you need to go to a mental institution. In reality, it's just, we're different. And that's one of the hardest parts about adoption.
Indeed. So your last name, Ferraro,
Mm-hmm.
That is your adopted name.
I won the lottery. Yeah, because you'd like to have a name.
Italian.
Yeah, you'd like to have a name that goes with it. My father's like 15% Italian, but he has the surname, and it was wonderful. Wonderful.
Okay.
I had a friend who was adopted from Asia, and she was Chinese, and she got adopted by a Jewish family right around the corner from me, and her name forevermore was Elaine Silverstein. And she always said, listen, I'm not going to give it back, but if I could do it differently, because it was, and so because I knew her and she made that joke and she felt that way, I always felt like, I'm very fortunate.
And so, yeah, you got the name, but not the temperament with the family.
So, so different. Yeah, so different. And my father is very temperamental, and my birth father is very temperamental as well. The information that was in the report, I recognized a lot of it, So I don't know how he is now, because I'm 51 and I have love in my life, and I've matured, and I've done decades of therapy and everything. So I'm not that guy anymore, and I'm, I was like, maybe there was hope that he wasn't that guy, but unfortunately it's just an impossibility to figure out who he is. I hired a private detective, and he said, there's just no way.
Have you done a DNA test?
That I was thinking I probably is my last, it's probably like my last stab at it. And
right, because she won't tell you the name, right?
No.
Right.
No. And there's a different twist to it that's not in there. I don't know if you want to hear it, but
yes,
okay.
Of course.
All right. So here's the thing, right? So I am writing the second half of this thing, and I'm doing it, at the urging of a publisher who said, it's a 2,500 word essay. That's what it is. If you could write me another one, now we're at 5,000 words, and then maybe we could figure something out, make it into a small paperback. So I'm supposed to treat this information or this story as like a proprietary thing, because that, unlike the first half, we wouldn't put the second half on the internet, so somebody would maybe pay for it, right? Okay, I understand that. But I will say that I approached one of my siblings. They're both boys, men, and I approached one of them, him unknowing. I kind of accosted him in the grocery store, because I had figured out what he does for a living and who he is and what he looks like, and I just was like, I cannot possibly let him know, because his mother is adamantly opposed to me knowing him. So it needs to be direct immediately. It can't be an email or a phone call or anything like that, because they also lived right around the corner from each other. So I did approach him, and it was a great experience. It was life-changing for a very short bit. But then eventually, he felt like he was cheating on his mother, and he parted ways with me as well. And that was very frustrating, because I was holding the championship trophy, and they're like, oh no, by the way, we got to play that last game over and see what happens. But you learn from all of it. He's a wonderful guy. I fell in love with the guy. He's a good dude. And I told my wife when I came home, she's like, well, what's he like? And I said, you know what he's like? He's better than me. That's what he's like, because he's a wonderful, just in it, way more innocent than I was, way less jaded than I was, because he grew up a different way, and I can't hold that against him. I'm happy he had that. He's a wonderful guy. But it's a perfect test case when you see him and you see me. We're, I think, 7, I don't know how many years apart we are, but you see us together, and you see that's the hard guy, meaning me. That's the guy who's been through the ringer, and that guy's had a better run of it. And he's very accomplished, and he's just a wonderful dude. But anyway, so that's that. So I asked him, this is an answer to your question in a round way. I asked him, how about my father? Your mother dated someone before and had a child with him, and that's me. And I was wondering if you could, if you could maybe find out information. He's like, well, I can't talk to my mom about it. I said, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. I said, but somebody has to know this guy, because she dated him. And your whole family, and you have this close family. Said, do you have a cool cousin or somebody you could confide in and say, hey, I want to help this person out, Robert? And he said, you know what? Maybe. And he would bring it up a couple more times, and then eventually he just said he wasn't comfortable moving forward together. So that's what it is. But there's obviously a lot of other pieces to that, and I look forward to writing it so that maybe somebody can see themselves in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part is when the more we share these stories, even though they're all so different in so many ways, they are also very similar.
Yeah, sure.
And those moments where you're listening to somebody or reading something and you think, oh, hell yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I listen to so many adoptees intently, more than in any other area of my life. If I read something about adoption or something, I really open myself up to it, which is why I was so like, oh, my story, like, because a lot of these people had bad things thrust upon them, and just horrific situations, horrific stories. That is not how you can describe my situation, but my situation was difficult. And I felt like, if I write it, some people see themselves in it. And the thing that I liked the most is that I got all sorts of emails and messages on Facebook, et cetera, from people who had an adoptive child in their family. And they said, I never thought about this. And to be honest with you, and I think you guys will probably agree, it blows me away that they never thought about this. Like, it's not, it's a major occurrence to not be raised by your birth family and to be raised by people who you don't want to call them strangers because they become your family, but strangers to start with.
They are.
Yes. Right.
Absolutely. They're strangers.
So I think that's the crazy thing. But I'm thankful. I don't mean to mock these people. I'm very happy they wrote and said that, but I am surprised. Like, and they're always saying, by the way, oh, and this person has a lot of problems. This person is going through a lot of things. And you go, sure, of course he is, because, don't you understand? That's why she is the way she is. So anyway, every time I write something like that, I'm going to get that kind of reaction, then it's worth it for me.
Totally worth it.
Yeah.
I feel like these podcasts, articles, essays, memoirs, like the more we can get them out there, the better, because I think a lot of families are doing a better job as far as adoptive parents, and fingers crossed, trying. Like, I know there are some out there. I just think our parents at our age, they thought they were doing what they were supposed to do, right? They didn't have information like we do now. There are so many adult adoptees speaking out now that we just need to listen to them. And we can help them, because as a child, right, if your parents realize that some of those struggles and uncomfortable and things you were feeling were addressed, not that they could solve them for you, but to make it okay that you had them, there'd be a big difference, I think, in the way your life progressed and how you were able to deal with things. So we just need to keep talking. You know
what I think, Amy? I think the great book on adoption, as far as benefiting adoptive parents, still has not been written. I don't think I'm capable of writing it, but I think, people who are better writers than I might be able to do that. And I think it's, I wanted my mother to learn more about adoption. I talked to her about the studies about monkeys who are taken away from their mothers and they don't do as well, and people who don't nurse, or animals that don't nurse with their mother don't do as well. And she was very interested and open-minded about it. But then every time I tried to get her information, it's always kind of clouded or sullied with more harsh and like almost indictments of like what like of the adoptive role, or they could take it that way at least. Like I love all the Betty Jean Lifton stuff. I like the Primal Wound, but in there are a lot of harsh truths about things, and I feel like it would benefit everybody if there was a book that adoptive parents can read that was like declawed a little bit, and instead say the most important basic stuff. Like, this is how we felt because our parents put us up for adoption. This is how we felt because of this and this, but not get into all the other things. It would be a difficult thing to do, but I think it would be really, because I myself would like to hand my mother that book.
Right. Yeah.
I tend to be more cynical than Amy. I'm not sure it's improved very much, only
Yeah.
because of conversations I've been a part of.
Mhm.
And I understand that idea of wanting it, like you said, declawed. That's a
Mhm.
great way of putting it. And yet, it is a hard truth
Mhm.
that when so many of us were adopted because of infertility issues, that sort of thing. And in those situations in particular, you can't fill that hole of grief with
Mhm.
someone else's child and expect there to be no consequences.
Mhm.
Expect that, as I think it's Barbara Sumner says, one set of arms is good as another,
Mhm.
is the idea.
Mhm.
And it's just not true.
Mhm.
Now, sometimes we do need external care. I get it. I'm not saying it should end. And sometimes I think, the hard things, you have to look that dragon in the face. And I feel like we as adopted people are trying to do that.
Yeah.
We take responsibility for the shitty things we've done,
Mhm.
and how we've reacted and stuff. But so many adopting parents I know, they just don't want to go there at all. And I
Yeah.
know because there's grief and they haven't worked through it, but I always think you need to. Otherwise this conversation doesn't go anywhere.
Mhm. You just said something that was really poignant, and I was like, I should have written it down. Anyway, I agree. Going to the main point, I agree with you, though, that those are discussions that need to happen. And I think that the unfortunate part of my own case is that my mother's willing to have it, but I can't hand her a book that says things like the adoptive mother will never have the bond that a birth mother has. At age 81, I can't subject her to that.
No.
And it's I maybe I would have at age 51, her age 51, or something like that. But we're too far past the moon with that. Pretty soon she's going to be thinking about what her life was like and the summation of her life. And I want her to know that she, did a good job. It was difficult, and so somebody had to do it, and she did it. Could I tell you something actually on the upside of this?
Yes.
All right, can I tell you? Because I was
Please.
thinking this. So yeah, I'll bring it up a little bit. So I was born in Overlook Hospital in Summit on March 10th, 1972, and my and a girl that I know was born on March like 6th or 7th, and her mother had a complication in pregnancy. So her mother left the hospital like on the 10th or the 11th. My mother, I know, went in on the night of the 9th, and the maternity world was as big as a shoebox back then. So we were definitely in the same room. And then her and her parents moved to a different town called Chatham, New Jersey. And we moved to the town in which I was going to be grown up and raised. And then she and her family moved next door. And we have been friends ever since. We have wished each other a happy birthday every year of our waking lives, probably since we were about 8 years old. To this day, we call each other on each other's birthday. I get her on the 6th. She gets me on the 10th. And she was very vital in my search for my brother because she was fired up about it, absolutely fired up about it. And so, it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. But that adoption gave me that. And I try to look at all the other things it gives me, and it gave me that. And so,
which is amazing.
Yeah, really amazing, especially because when I'm about to like approach my brother and he doesn't know I'm going to do it and everything. She's the one all fired up. And it was like almost like a caper that we were doing together, and it was pretty poetic. It was wonderful. But
I too, like you, can look at what adoption has brought me. It has
right.
brought me, my family and my kids, that like you have that wonderful friend. So yes, I think that's a lovely way to kind of end this with your little bassinet buddy that you are still in contact with, which I think is amazing.
I like that bassinet buddy. I'm going to text her that.
Okay.
I love it.
Is there anything else that you want to share with us that we didn't touch on?
Just, I think you guys will agree with this, right? So I loved talking to you both. You guys are wonderful on the subject, and it's just great to hear other adoptees, and people who come from speak about it from a place where you're speaking about it from. But I just think that, if we were to talk for another hour, it would go in another million directions. And if we were to talk for another hour, it would go in another million directions. And I find that frustrating at times. And I think it's a characteristic of adoptees, which is it's hard to just say this is black and this is white and it's down this lane. And, you can't put it all in the same box. It's there's just so many divergent feelings and divergent experiences that we've had. And it's just impossible to say, you know what, right now I'm happy, that kind of thing. You know what, it's been going this way a little bit. I like the way it's trending, and the way I feel about my adoption is trending upward, as I just said, but it's talk to me 2 days from now. I really enjoy speaking about it with you. I get to the point where I don't really want to speak about it to anyone who isn't adopted.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yes, these conversations are easy. We're strangers, but yet we can have this wonderful conversation and feel supported and validated and acknowledged, which is amazing. So I really enjoyed speaking with you two tonight.
Yeah, I did too. Thank you for having me. I hope I didn't talk too much. I tend to do that.
No, you did a great job.
We wanted you to talk. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Great. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I look forward to your next writing.
Yeah. You know what? I'll, if you want me to, I'll drop you a line. That's going to be a while from now, but I'll drop you a line when I do.
I'll be
Absolutely.
waiting.
Keep in touch. Yeah. Let us know what you're doing.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks,
Appreciate
Robert.
Amy and Elle and Stephanie, who's out there somewhere, I think. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a great night, everybody.